Hey, everybody. It worked. We're here. Send me some chats if you can hear me, if the sound is working. This is the first time I've ever gone live. I was kind of nervous, and I have a couple friends here who are helping me. That's it. I hear myself. There's a little delay. Cool. All right. All right. Caroline, thank you. Deb Riley says, unfortunately, yes, the sound works. Okay, well, moderator might have to watch that one. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to this live stream. I get, I don't know, 200 questions a day. Lately, it's more like 500 on YouTube, and I haven't been able to get back to everybody. And I was like, well, now's the time. I've got to go live and, um, just have a chance to hear what's on your mind and what you want answers to. So I've got my sons here helping me. One of them's moderating, and he's going to be texting me things that I really need to focus on if I'm yammering away. So answering somebody and trying to focus. But anyway, this is a new medium for me. And so bear with me as I figure out how to do this. So I'm ready for questions, y'all. Um, and I just see Assyrian Relief wants to know this isn't a question. There's a link according to studies between trauma and chronic illness. Yes, there is Assyrian Relief. Assyrian Relief. This is has to do with the. You don't have to message me. Your chat is reaching me, and the moderator is going to make sure that I see questions and can spot them. So yeah. So to start off, yeah, there's totally a link between trauma and chronic illness. Some of you know this, but a lot of people don't, including your doctor, might not know. The ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, it started over 20 years ago. It was a collaboration between the Centers for Disease Control here in the US and Kaiser Permanente, a major health provider here. And they started to notice that women in a weight loss program, women who had more than 100 pounds to lose, would lose the weight and then gain it back. And they asked them what was going on and started asking a lot of questions. And they discovered that among women who were what's called morbidly obese, 80% of them had been sexually abused. And they said, wait a minute, what's going on here? And the research continued, and it turned out that just about every chronic illness is correlated with a history of trauma. The more trauma you had, the more risk there is. It doesn't mean you're doomed, but it means there's a higher probability. And we always knew it was stuff like depression and anxiety and addictions, but it's also stuff like diabetes, heart disease, reproductive disorders, autoimmune diseases. See these little people often comment, see how I don't have pigment right there? I have almost no pigment on my face. I wear makeup, but that's called vitiligo. Michael Jackson had it. And that's an autoimmune disease, and it's probably linked to trauma. It's really common. So hopefully that helps. All right, now there's tons of chats. And so Harry, maybe you can, you got one for me here? I think I heard great. Okay, well now, isn't that interesting, asks, how do you get back into healthy behaviors after slips? That's the greatest question on earth. So here's what I do. Here's what I do about everything. You're going to hear me say this again and again and again. The daily practice. I teach something called the daily practice. It's two techniques. One is a writing technique. One is a meditation technique. And it's not like other writing and meditation techniques necessarily that you've done before. And they're done together morning and evening, and the writing can be done again as needed. And it's a process of getting fearful and resentful thoughts out on paper, then resting in meditation and letting your mind heal itself twice a day. It sounds really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. And a lot of you have heard my story on my videos. It's been almost 27 years now. It was in January 1994. I was attacked on the street. My mom died, and I got dumped, and my PTSD got extreme. And I always had childhood PTSD, but of course nobody then knew what it was. I didn't know. And in the attack, I had a head injury, and I had a CAT scan, and they didn't see any brain damage or bleeding. So they said, you're fine, but I wasn't fine. 3 months later, I still couldn't read or dial a phone. Nobody would help me. I was going to a therapist. They were like, let's talk again about what happened. I'm like, well, they came out of a car. I, I saw them out of the corner of my eye. They said, blah, blah, blah. Talking about it would trigger me and I would get worse. And the PTSD would get worse. And about a month after that, I had the good fortune to meet a woman much younger than me. She had not that long ago gotten sober. She had been living on the streets in San Francisco. And she said, do you want to see what I did to get sober? Now, alcohol isn't my thing. I have all kinds of issues, but not that. And I allowed her to help me. And she showed me how to write my fears and resentments on paper. And that's the beginning of my story of healing. I got much better right away. I had many things to learn and still do, but that's the daily practice. And at the time when I got the daily practice, I was a very heavy smoker, 2 packs a day for 16 years. And I had tried many things to quit, and I could get maybe 4 or 5 days. I was on patches, gum, hypnosis, groups, everything, books. And the daily practice came, and I still couldn't quit. And I said, hey, shouldn't I be able to quit? You were able to quit drinking. She goes, just give it time. And it took me about 3 years before I could be totally twice a day with it, with the daily practice, writing and meditating twice a day. And I just had a cluster of terrible traumas in my life. I had a boyfriend die of an overdose, and I was in the middle of graduating from grad school. It was very stressful. And I got Graves' disease, another autoimmune disease. My thyroid went out and I was really, really sick. And I just got to sort of thank these periods in my life when everything went wrong at once for getting an open mind where I would try something new. So I became willing to try this different thing. And my mind came together, and I popped out of the suicidal depression I was in. And within 2 weeks, I not only was feeling happier, but I had a level of focus that nobody in my office had. I could dial the phone, I could read, and not only that, I could sit in a meeting for an hour and pay attention to everything that was said. I had never been able to do that before. And so a lot of this story you'll hear on YouTube or in my courses. I tell the story in more detail. And I'm just really glad you're here, and I'm glad you asked that. All right, Harry's given me a whole ton of questions here. Let me see if I'll take them from the bottom up. Um, Monica B asks how to handle when older friends trigger you with similar. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I didn't finish that story. I quit smoking when I got daily with this. I never smoked again, and I never even wanted a cigarette. And I cannot guarantee that for you. It was a long process, but that's what happened. I got free enough of fear and resentment that, and I had a way. Let me put it this way. You have to have a way to get comfort. Cigarettes, for me, were regulating. They were how I could get a little distance from something stressful, and I could pull my head back together. And I could not quit until I had a way to do that. And that's what the daily practice does for me. It gives me a way to just get some comfort and calm down and sort of come back out of that sort of like, if any of you have addictions to anything, like when you want a cigarette or something like that, it's like an itch. It's like you have to have it. And I just had a way to sort of like relax all of that by writing and meditating. Very powerful. And by the way, a week from today, I'm going to have at this same time, not live, but a recording of an interview with my meditation teacher, Paul Brown. And that was the second piece of the daily practice. And he's going to talk about Vedic meditation. So, okay. So back to the questions. All right. And I was on Monica. Monica said, how to handle when older friends trigger you with similar words to parents, but doesn't feel safe to bring it up to change it. The ultimate goal, Monica, is to not be triggered. That's what the daily practice is for, and that's what I teach. I think like so many solutions to CPTSD, we end up talking about what other people doing and talking about my parents did this and it's triggering for me. And I teach something radically different. I'm like, okay, the problem now is like in here. The problem is that I get triggered. The problem isn't what my mom did to me. It's that I get triggered. And so what the daily practice is for, hey, Jack,
Yeah.
could you move this light a little bit? Because it's just putting a shadow right in the middle of my eye. Sorry. So what the daily practice is for is just to calm those triggers. And what a trigger is it's basically a deep cluster of fear and resentment. And the daily practice is the way to start laying that down and just transferring it like out of here, where I call it like hamster brain, just fear. Maybe like a little over there. Thank you. Um, yeah, I don't know. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Um, what you find though when you have the fear and resentment day by day is being removed and released and removed and released, and then it comes back and then you release it again, and then it comes back and you release it again, and it just gradually day by day it's coming down. And then you remember, I used to get triggered by this, and you just don't anymore. And it's not that you become a perfect saint and you never get triggered, but it's just a lot less. It's a lot more manageable. And if you're not like intensely triggered to the point that you can't function and you can't really connect anymore, and your mind is just completely removed from the situation, you have choices and it's so wonderful. And then you can sort of like choices mean, first of all, you can say, do I really want to be friends with this person? Um, but somebody saying things like your parents, I don't know what you mean, but you might mean that, you might mean that they are abusive? Well, what you do about abusive friends is you stop being friends with them. But if they're just saying things that casually are triggering you, and it's not their fault and they didn't do anything, it's on you. It's on you. It's on me. It's on us to just sort of like take it down. And trying to talk to somebody about that, trying to say, "Hey, I want you to stop saying that." It's not the best approach. You like trying to control other people is just a recipe for pushing them away. Nobody likes that. You don't like it when people tell you what you can and can't say. But if you're close to somebody, you can sort of open up a little bit and say, "Yeah, I get triggered. I'm working on it. I'm triggered. I'm working on it." When you say this thing, if I act weird, it's because of this, but don't worry, you don't really have to change. And they can change if they want to. But I really would, I just want to encourage you to really look at this in a new way and stop trying to tell other people not to trigger you. Because it's basically once you have this technique, these techniques to calm your triggers, you're basically asking them to do the technique for you. And they gotta be them like, the reason you're healing is so that you can be your real self, and part of being your real self is respecting other people being their real selves too. So there's a sort of summary answer. Um, okay, I'm coming back to the questions. Um, all right. Weird Cider asked, "Do you offer any one-on-one services?" Yes, you can go to my website, crappychildhoodfairy.com. There's a coaching tab there. I do one-on-one coaching. I keep it pretty limited. I have more people asking than I can fit, but one-on-one coaching. I also do, I have an 8-week coaching intensive that's just wrapping up right now. I'll be offering it again in January, and that's for people who are ready for like advanced techniques. And I also, if you become a member of Crappy Childhood Fairy, you get access to all my courses, and I have twice weekly group coaching calls, and I take questions, and those calls are dynamite. They're really great. Yesterday we had about 36 people, which isn't even 10% of the members, but they come on, and I was able to take maybe 5 questions, and the questions are deep and powerful, and the feeling in the group is great. And I think it's a great value to be able to access group coaching twice a month. So that's for an hour. I also, for free, because let's face it, most of the world doesn't have money for this kind of thing. You can take my free daily practice course. It's on the website on the courses page. It's free. It takes less than an hour to try it and learn it. Once you're in it, you get invited to twice monthly free Zoom calls where we do the techniques together, and then I do Q&A there. And people from all over the world come. And those calls are lovely too. It's been a really, really positive place. So those are some options from most expensive to free. All right, so next questions. All right, Mara Kalet one asks, "How do you deal with the people that traumatized you if you can't just cut them out of your life?" Well, there we are, right? If we can't cut them out of our lives, one example are certain family members or next door neighbors or the other parent, right? In an ex who you're co-parenting, but there's a lot of triggers and trauma there. And it's the same thing. It's about learning to calm your own triggers so that you have choices about what you say. And I have a video I did recently, really upset a lot of people, but it was like, if you do want to have contact with people, and I just called it like going home. I thought I'd do it in time for the holidays. Here's I think it was like 10 things you can do to become more neutral to them so that you can get through a visit. Because it's funny, the people who got mad are people who are like, they've gone no contact, and lots of people go no contact and they recognize, hey, not everybody wants to go no contact. We're trying to have contact. We're just trying to handle it and mitigate it a little bit. So some people just can't imagine that other people have it different. But I would say most people who had a traumatic childhood have people they want to see, but it's hard to be around them. And so the 10 tips are things like to have an exit plan. Like if things get crazy, when I used to have a family to go home to, we Christmas was a time, for example, when a lot of people would get very drunk and fists might come out. And one year, my brother who died, he died a long time ago now from drugs, but he was really volatile and he lost his job on Christmas Eve. And we knew like he was going to get very drunk and he was probably going to show up at the family. And we said, if you're going to get really drunk, he was like a terrible drunk. Some people are nice drunks. He was a violent drunk. And we had to hide a baseball bat behind the door just in case. And it was this very weird conversation where the family had to take a vote and say, if he had threatened, he said, I'm going to come and I'm going to shoot you all. Well, so we took a vote. We go, baseball bat, what do we do? If he comes, do we hit him with it? And we were like, yeah. And then we were like, yeah, but he had a head injury from a motorcycle accident. It could kill him. And we're like, risk we have to take if he has a gun. So just to share with you, yeah, I know about dramatic family stuff. And I went, and if I had it to do over again, I would go again. I miss everybody. They all died. Surprise, there's still people living, but not the ones who had drug and alcohol problems. They were pretty severe. So yeah, the other things are have a car, have a place to stay in touch with other people, don't get all isolated. There's techniques that we use to dysregulate on purpose, whether we realize it or not, like just eating a bunch of carbs or drinking or, one thing you can do to get all dysregulated if you want is just like start looking at Twitter and look at like rage scrolling, like getting all outraged about stuff. That's like checking out, but checking out and getting all upset and angry and checked out. It's a quick fix for when you're upset, but it's actually going to make it really difficult to think on your feet if something weird happens. And then when people try to start a fight with you, you do not have to get into the fight. And I have all kinds of techniques that I learned when I was going through a divorce. My ex-husband and I actually ended up teaching we have an online course called Positive Shared Custody, and where he does the daily practice too. And now that we, just have no anger, we're each remarried, we're friends, we are really good parents to our kids. Now that we do that, we shared notes. It's like, you want to hear how I got out of fighting with you? This is what I would do. So this is one of my favorite tricks. You're talking to somebody. I'm just going to pretend I have a phone. It could be anywhere. And they start saying that they're picking a fight, hey, you da 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 da. And you go, oh, you know what? Sorry, I'm getting another call. Can I call you back? And they go, oh, okay. And then you just don't call them back. Nobody's the wiser. And you didn't have a fight. And if you're a person who gets dysregulated from CPTSD, wahoo, no fight that's what you want. And people can spin. They can try to start fights. They can say horrible, racist, sexist, bigoted, idiotic things. And you just go, yeah, that's interesting that you think so. And then you just go on and have a conversation with somebody else. You just stay neutral, and it makes no difference. You're not changing the world when you argue with somebody who's drunk on hate or booze or whatever it is. So you might as well just kind of like hold on to your composure, take care of yourself, keep your power to make choices. So I hope that helps. It's this thing about chat is people might be giving me like follow-up comments, but I can't quite see them. So maybe Harry can help me with that, but we'll see. I'm going to get better at this as we go. All right. Philosophical Wolf asks, how does ADHD and anxiety relate to CPTSD? So, all right, first of all, I always have to say a caveat. I am not a psychologist or therapist or any kind of clinician. I'm just a person, but I read books. And here's what I've read, and maybe you've read it too. I also Google things. But a lot of ADHD is probably CPTSD. And they didn't know about CPTSD. Many people out there still don't. And so they're just calling it ADHD, and they're treating it however they treat it. But if it's not the correct diagnosis, it's probably not the best treatment. And learning to calm it's dysregulation. That is the thing that we're zeroing in on. That is the rocket science that emerged in the last 10 years of what's really going on with us. It's a neurological phenomenon. It's triggered by brain changes that happen from abuse and neglect in kids. It could be triggered by other things. Adults with PTSD could have it, and just people in general, another category, another kind of person who often comes to my channel and asks questions are people on the autistic spectrum. A lot of their symptoms are similar. Some people on the spectrum struggle with dysregulation too. So it's not like the exclusive property of CPTSD, but dysregulation is it's a brain state that's changing your nervous system, and it feels like something when it's happening. It shows on a brain scan, and it has a long-term effect that affects every part of your physiology and your psychology. So anxiety is anxiety is so broad, isn't it? But when people have anxiety that they can't control, I absolutely recommend. So this is my thing, like whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it, whatever your diagnosis that you've been given or not given or misdiagnosed. If your symptom is that you struggle to focus and your emotions go all over and you get discombobulated under stress and you just need to pull away from people sometimes or yell at them when things are too intense for you, just use these techniques. They're really helpful for the symptom, whether or not you qualify with the diagnosis. I'll tell you a secret. In the United States, they don't even recognize CPTSD. I live in the US, so I've never been diagnosed. And I'm fine with that. I just, we know now that even among things that have been diagnosed over, decades, different practitioners diagnose differently. And then when they treat, the way they treat different things, it starts to get so different as to almost have no meaning. And so I always advocate that as a person who struggles, you got to stay the captain of your own ship, make your own choices. You go see professionals to get their professional opinion. And there are a few cases where somebody is like having such a terrible state where they might hurt themselves or other people that professionals can and should take over decision making for them or families. But most of us are not in that situation. So we have to stay the captain of our own ship and directing decisions. And what I really want to encourage everybody to get out of, because there's a lot of pain out there about people who have spent years and dollars and euros and we've put all of our faith in people who were supposed to help us and we're not helped yet. Some were, but many of us were not helped yet. And just to take that resentment at the people who failed to help you onto the paper. They tried, and just bless everybody who tried. Everybody's using the best information they have. For all we know, in 20 years, we're going to know so much more and it's going to be easier. But right now, today, I have techniques that you can use whether you have professional help or not. This is all you need. You don't need money. You just need some paper and a pencil. And I also happen to use backs of envelopes and, just scraps of paper. And I've had to write sometimes with pens that don't work. It doesn't matter. I just need to do it. And it calms me. And it calms me in the moment. And there's a cumulative effect over time. All right, I'm going to take another question. Gosh, I see all this chat scrolling and I'm just sorry I'm going to miss all this. Luckily, I get to save it and I get to see it later what you asked. All right. Lorna Collodi asks, can we heal completely from our traumas or is this an ongoing daily practice? My experience is it's an ongoing daily practice. I've experimented with quitting. Before I knew what it was with CPTSD, the thing that I call it, the first 12 years, I just was like, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. That was a known thing. There were many ways that I didn't 100% relate to that because I'm definitely an adult child of an alcoholic, but my mom died and I just got worse. So I was forced to recognize the problems in here. And the woman who showed me the way out was an alcoholic and I'm not. And I thought, why am I so much like an alcoholic? I have CPTSD. And I think it is like alcoholism where an alcoholic can get long-term sobriety, but they're always going to have to be mindful of it. A few people, most people have to stay in some form of recovery. Some don't, and they're able to stay sober. There's a very high prevalence of relapse, and for us too. So at 12 years in all of this, when I was going through my divorce and life just got really hard, I had all these medical problems, financial problems. Everything was going south. I was like, this doesn't work. I'm not going to do it. I'm an idiot to have put my trust in all of this. and I gave it up, and at first it was fine, and, it was about at first I dwindled with it, then I gave it up entirely, and next thing you know, after my divorce, I was in a relationship with somebody who I had been seeing for 3 months, and then I found out they were a heroin addict. And that was shocking to me because I had no idea. I had done this before, and it was really clear to me that something was seriously wrong with me and my perception. And I'd been struggling to understand, why do people judge me? Why are we not invited anymore to these parties? And it was like, because everyone else could see that I was being self-destructive. And so for me, my experience was like, at first I couldn't feel any difference, and I didn't have a word for dysregulation. And the thing about dysregulation is when, you're getting all just discombobulated and frustrated and just it always seems that other people are causing it. It just seems like other people have done that to you, but they're not. That's not what causes it. It's causing it in here. Something outside yourself triggers it. And I'll just put a caveat. If somebody is actually threatening you or being violent, yes, they're causing the problem. You want to take sane measures to protect yourself and get out of any situation like that. But just when somebody says something or you feel left out or something, that's a trigger, and a trigger is inside. It's inside you. And, so I can just say, knowing what I know now, I look back and I just see I started to lose all control over my triggers. I started to believe my triggers, and my triggers all tell me somebody's persecuting me. I'm helpless. I'm just like this great gal, and everybody around me is a terrible person and they're persecuting me. And that's what it feels like when it just goes on untreated. And so one of the hardest things when I'm working with people is, I don't know, so luckily, thanks to YouTube, a lot of people sort of make this transition before they even contact me. But trying to make that like epiphany happen, that awakening of like, nothing is being done to you. You're in a bad dream that it's being done to you, but actually it's being generated in here. And job number one is to learn how to calm that reaction to it. And I'm not like this magical thinker who's saying like, nothing is real, or, it's all just your reaction to it. Like, life is real. I've been through some serious shit. Okay. It's just stuff happens. And people have done things. But my reaction to it really inhibits my ability to respond sanely. So when somebody is threatening to me, I want to be sane. So I just kind of know what to do. I know to get the baseball bat or get out of there and run or whatever I need to do, or call 911. And I need to be sane. And I can't be sane when I have this clouded perception. And one of the most painful aspects of CPTSD for me and a lot of us is I lost my red flag detector. I could not perceive red flags, that somebody was a danger, that they were no damn good, that they didn't really care about me. I just let them right into my life, just right on in. I make them my boyfriend, like an idiot. And and I'm being hard on myself. It's okay. I didn't know. I didn't know. And I had to wake up. So my life really turned around 14 years into having this daily practice when I turned around and took it seriously. I still didn't know what CPTSD was, but right about that time, I made a number of serious changes. I put some serious structure around my romantic life. I wasn't dating anybody, and I made some big decisions to get mentoring about how to do that. I teach that in my dating course. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. And, really radical. I have a very radical approach to stop having those problems of ending up with bad people. But I also got entirely regular with the daily practice. I had some EMDR. I got help with 5 adult traumas. It worked like a charm. The boyfriend who, the drug addict I told you about, as some of you know, trigger warning, he died. He did that to himself. And because I was pulling away from him. And I don't regret it. I had to pull away. I'm sorry that's what he ended up doing, but I'm so glad I'm not in that relationship anymore. And yeah, the process does not always go smoothly. It looks messy sometimes as we awaken to what it is, this core stuff going on. So my blind spot to a red flag was so destructive. And what had to happen was I had to feel pain about what had happened and gotten into my life to the point that I would be receptive once again to go into an even deeper level. And many of you know I'm a spiritual person. And people follow my techniques without being necessarily spiritual or having different forms of spirituality than me. I'm a God person. And you really can use these techniques where whatever you do. But I do think it helps to have something bigger than yourself, something, and I always remind you, you look, grass that gets stepped on heals. When you skin your knee, it heals. You are oriented towards healing. Your natural state is to heal. So let it happen. Get into that river and start healing and start letting it happen. Now this has gotten so complex. I can't remember what the question was, but I'm going to go back and take another question. So, because we got such a queue here going. Okay. Oh yeah. So Lorna, it is an ongoing daily practice. I give it up now and I think I'm okay, but then next thing you know, I'm very crunchy, very not just crunchy. It's just better if I keep doing it. I'll tell you this also for those of you who are doing the daily practice, a lot of people struggle to do it twice a day at first, but I'll just tell you flat out, until you're doing it twice a day, it can't really work. It works kind of, it works a little bit, but doing it once a day is not half as good as twice a day. It's something, it's not nothing, but twice a day, all of a sudden you're like, you get lift off. So, give a try twice a day. And if you're watching this and you still don't know what daily practice is, there's always links below my videos to it. And it's on my courses page, courses.crappychildhoodfairy.com. And it's the free course in there. Okay, so next question. All right. Sema asks, how to help a loved one awaken from gaslight. Thank you. Best regards from Belgium. Hi, Belgium. Hi, Sema. It is so hard to help loved ones, and especially if they don't want to be helped. I think the best thing you can do is be very, very accepting of where they are and remember that they're in a bad dream, and you don't yell at people who are in a bad dream. And I regret very much the times that I've yelled at people because I wanted them to see something. Someone in my family lost custody of their kids, and the social worker advised me, make them leave their spouse, make them do it, or they're not going to get their kids back. And I did that. I just got horrible with them, and I yelled in their face, and I wouldn't stop because I was told they will lose their kids. I'm like, I've got to save you with this. And they didn't lose their kids, but I lost that relationship. So I'm no longer into yelling at people. I think people need a lot of acceptance, but at the same time, we have to have boundaries. No one should put up with abuse. When somebody has CPTSD or anything else, don't put up with abuse. That they do not have a right to call you names, threaten you, constantly undermine your security, threaten to take your kids away, whatever it is. They don't have that right. And so having boundaries is one of the best things that you can do for somebody who's freaking out and doing that stuff. It forces them. If you're not having boundaries, you're enabling them. And you're not doing anybody a favor for that. And then you can ask them. And if you have asked one time and they haven't listened to you, that might be enough. If you've asked 3 times, it's too many. And you got to let it go and just decide if you want that person in your life anymore. And if you don't have a choice about whether they're in your life, you're basically in an Al-Anon situation. And Al-Anon's a 12-step program for families and relatives of families and loved ones of alcoholics. And it teaches this strange kind of like psychological martial art of how to detach from somebody who's just self-destructing, but keep your own life together. And I recommend it to anybody who's in that situation. Okay. All right. Next question. Yash asks, is it toxic to develop a savior complex and look out and advise your friends even if they don't want to improve? Yep, 100%. It's toxic. And it's not cool. It's not loving. It's not being present. And it's usually a distraction from the work that we have to do. And I think if you look at all the ancient traditions, they all tell you the same thing. It's like before you go judging everybody else, clean your own house. Take the log out of your eye before you criticize the splinter in your friend's eye. And it's called codependence, and it's a distraction. And I've been there. I told you about the drug addict guy. I was the one who, because once I knew he was using heroin, my mind flipped over into this mode that I could save him. And I said, so I've thought up a program that you can do. If you go to a meeting every day, and if you go to treatment, and if you do outpatient treatment, not inpatient, because I just had all these ideas. And he just said whatever I wanted to hear because he didn't want me to leave. But then I would follow him around in my car, which is not uncommon with people who have been made insane by being close to somebody who's self-destructing. And guess what? He wasn't anywhere he said he was. Everything was a lie. And it was really bad for him, and it was bad for me, just having me like breathing down his neck. He just needed his own space. And there was nothing I could do. There was really nothing I can do. People do have to find it themselves. But what people do benefit from is loving acceptance and boundaries, that you just don't take crap from them. Okay. Am I caught up? I'm looking at Mara Kylet here. Is it common to have a visceral reaction to loving yourself? Like, no, how dare you suggest I not hate myself? I don't know. I have a video called "Do You Need to Love Yourself?" And I just don't relate to that. When people go, before you love anyone else, you have to love yourself. And that is not my experience. I've gone through periods of my life really hating myself, but deeply and genuinely loving other people. For example, my children, loving them entirely and well, but having an issue with myself. For me, self-love is a byproduct of clearing up my life. And clearing up my life became possible when I had less fear and resentment and could see clearly. Like, if I can't detect red flags in the world out there, I can't manage my own life. I can't see what I'm doing wrong. And I was doing so many things. I was really self-centered when I was in that trauma state. And I'm not criticizing myself, I'm just describing it. It's very hard to realize your effect on other people when you're dysregulated and in trauma. And it's very unlikely that you're not hurting people if you're interacting with people while traumatized. It's something like being drunk. And I feel like a lot of the treatments out there really bring the focus on what is done to us. But my healing moved forward when I was able to focus on what I was doing. And I couldn't do that till I could calm the dysregulation. And then I focused on what I was doing. And there was so much to clean up. Oh my gosh. If my life were a house, it was like a hoarder house. It was just so full of all these mistakes and bad memories and things I'd said and done. There was also so much good stuff in there, but it was all mixed up. I was loaded with shame. I had so much free floating shame. I didn't even really know what I was ashamed of anymore. I just had this bad feeling. I had this hunched posture. I was fake with everybody. I was afraid all the time in social interactions. And one by one, through writing, I was able to get down all the things I could identify where I hurt another person. And I got some support from my mentor to go in and begin to address those things. So some of them I didn't do anything about because the person was dead or because it was an ex and it was not boundaried to make contact with them again. Um, some of them I was able to go and directly apologize for what I did. And usually it went okay. Occasionally it went insanely well. But the thing was I didn't have shame anymore. And I just found that of all the free floating shame that was in my consciousness, maybe about a third of it was stuff I really had to address. And when I did that, the other 2/3 just sort of evaporated. It was like real shame caused by stuff that had done to hurt people and let them down and not come through on my promises. Real shame was like a magnet for this like free floating shame. So when people say somebody shamed me, nobody can shame me if I don't actually have shame. They can say bad things about me, and that is harmful, but but it's different than feeling ashamed. That's my take on it. That's my take on it. So, okay, what else have we got? All right. Mhm, mhm. Okay, Lily Melly, here we go. I want to go back to work, but I'm even more frozen and stuck in bed, unable to go take care of myself. Please help doing the daily practice, sleeping better and getting along better with people. All right, Lily, paralysis is really hard. And I'm assuming it's because the outside world is so triggering that you can't really bear it, that because you don't have an adequate way to self-regulate, that you're self-regulating by avoiding stimulus. And maybe you can put in the comments if that's true. And Harry, you can just tell me what Lily says, because it's a little hard for me to talk and read at the same time. Um, okay, yeah, tell me through my headphones because there's so much here. Um, but so yeah, paralysis. So yeah, yeah. Lily says that's true. Great. Okay, I see it now. So 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 there's the task in front of you is to learn self-regulation. I'm glad you're doing the daily practice. But Lily, do you have a buddy? Are you in a group? Are you on the Zoom calls? If you really need the daily practice, I'm going to really encourage you to get in here and be a member so that you can be in the Facebook community, and anybody can be on the Zoom calls, but there's deeper levels of connection for people who are members in here. And the reason it has to be through the membership is it's got to be vetted, because I'll be honest with you, there's people in the PTSD community, they're still messed up. They're horrible. You wouldn't believe the hate mail I get. You might see it sometimes before I get rid of it. They say terrible things, okay? And I don't want Okay, good. Lily, come be a member. You can become a member on my website. There's a member tab. And so come check that out. So, for anybody out there, when you're doing the daily practice, you can learn it by yourself, but after a certain point, you want to find other people to do it with. And what buddies do, buddies can read what they wrote to each other. You don't want to read that to just anybody. So if I've got a bunch of resentment at my husband, right, and we get resentful at the people closest to us, so that might be what's going on. If I just go read that to my next door neighbor and go, I'm resentful at my husband because I have fear he's such an idiot, and fear he was never any good, and fear I'm better than him, and whatever the fears are, she's just going to go, wow, you think are you better than your husband? Is he an idiot? Or she's going to project whatever her resentments are about men, right? Well, men are pigs, I got my mind. And none of that is helpful to me. I read to somebody who does this themselves, and it's for, I'm a straight woman, so it would be a woman, and somebody where there's not going to be any kind of romantic tension, and a trustworthy person who does this themselves. If they've been doing it longer than you, extra points. And if they've had exposure to people who have really been doing it deeply, extra points, so that you understand the philosophy. So we share this with another person just to have a witness, and they go, that's great. They encourage us. They go, that's so good, you're getting rid of that. Because what we're doing when we let our deep, dark thoughts get onto the paper is in essence, it's a confession. It's not a list. It's not an analysis. It's not a journal. It's not a journal. Not a journal. Journals are for recording and looking for patterns and analyzing. This is taking out the trash. We're just sweeping it out the door. And so my terrible thoughts about people, I have terrible thoughts about people. I'm such a misanthrope. And that's just life, right? And it's part of being human. And with CPTSD, it can be really vicious inside. We get it on paper so that we can be free of it. Now, lest you think, Lily, if you're holding back, and I don't know that you are, but just this is really common. If you're holding back because you're afraid that if you lose your resentment, you won't have boundaries. That's like the idea, but I have to resent my narcissistic mom or she's going to get back into my life. Not so. When you keep writing the resentment, you just get clearer about who you really are and what you really need and what you really want. You don't become just like a doormat. That's not what we're after here. We're becoming clear. It's more like becoming a Jedi. All right? Think of a Jedi. I think that's a common thing. We all understand what that is. A Jedi is someone who's really gotten free of their fear and resentment, and they're clear and solid, and they have that groundedness, right? And then when bad things happen, they have the Force. And that's what we have. That's what we have. So there's your analogy for that. There was something else I wanted to say to you about it. Okay, 2 things that go wrong in the daily practice that can hold it back from working. One is when you're writing your resentments, a lot of times, even though people have seen the video and the thing where I emphasize how to do this, they skip over that and they say, I don't know if my mom was a narcissist necessarily. She was an alcoholic, but I'm just going to say narcissistic mom. That's a very common problem. And just say, I'm resentful at my mom because she was a narcissist, No, you're right. I'm resentful at my mom because I have fear she was a narcissist. Fear her behavior really hurt me. Fear she did this. Fear she did that. Fear it really hurt me. So I'm resentful at so-and-so because I have fear. And then the reason. You don't go right into the reason. This is not a list of everything that pisses you off. It's not a list. It's a confession that you have fear that's driving you to be resentful about stuff that happened way back in the past, and makes you spin and keeps you locked into being at the effect of it. So you're going to release the hold of that lock. You still have choices about it, but you're not locked into it. You're not spinning. You're not pressed down from being yourself or getting out of bed by it anymore. So the fear that you're going to get triggered, it might be realistic. You might be getting triggered. And that's where we bring in titration. All right. Everybody who's gotten so triggered that they can't really cope anymore, it's time to start giving yourself tiny little measures. So titration is where you give a little bit of medicine. You can't give it all at once or it'll cause a terrible reaction. Little bit, the immune system copes. Little bit of medicine, immune system copes. Little bit, little bit. You keep seeing how it goes and then add more. And that's what we do with connecting with people in the world and getting out of bed. But getting out of bed, literally what that requires is what I call power. All right, it takes power to get out of the bed. So when we sign off from the daily practice, that's why you see the two elements. You want to know what your next steps are, but you also are asking for power to do those next steps. It takes power to get up out of bed. It takes power to brush your teeth. You know you should get out of bed and brush your teeth, but you don't necessarily have the power to do it. So it's two steps. You need to know what to do and you need power. And through the daily practice, and especially if you can just allow that there is a river of goodness, let's call it good, all right? If you're a God person, call it God. If you're not a God person, let's call it the good with a capital G. The good is a warm, lovely river that carries us along, and we stop fighting. We can start just flowing in the river with less fear and resentment. Fear and resentment has us holding on to the sides. I can't do it. I can't get in. But we can do it. We can do it when we know how to have boundaries against bad things and re-regulate ourselves when things go awry, which they do, which they do. so, so that's what it takes. And to this day, some stuff is really hard for me, or it hits me by surprise. But I just always know what to do. So everywhere I go, I have these with me. I get these little small ones that fit into my purse. And I have them in the glove compartment of my car, and they're in every room of the house, and there's pens everywhere. And most of the people in my family do it. And sometimes if I'm bitchy with my family, they will say, I think you need to write your fears and resentments. And that's helpful too. It's helpful when other people are around you. Okay, but that said, don't get all hopeful that everybody around you is going to do it just because you do it. And don't push it. Most people won't do it. They don't need to. And for reasons we don't understand, they just aren't going to. And so we got to stop imagining their potential and just take them as they are, love them as they are, or leave them as they are, and and focus on this and focus on this. And I just promise you that you have much more equanimity, magnanimity. You can just be much more at peace and okay with people as they are. The older I get and the more peaceful I get, the more I just go, oh, wow, everybody's kind of messed up, aren't they? And everybody's kind of lovable too, most people. And I just have less, I'm just not at war with everybody anymore. And I don't have to be afraid of them as much. But that's not to say it doesn't happen. And you can ask my kids. School functions with the other moms, I just could. I just can't deal with it. I don't know why. It's really triggering for me. The other moms, the normal people. And the kids make fun of me, and they joke about the moms who make Jello stars, little Jello shapes, and give them to all the kids. They're like, "You never made us Jello stars." It's like, no, I didn't. But what I did give my kids, and I feel really good about, and they're hearing me right now, I just feel really good about. I showed them a way to deal with fear and resentment, and so they have the keys to the kingdom now, and they can cope with anything that comes now. And I think it's really helped them, and we'll see what they end up doing with that. But we occasionally get to do writing and meditating together. The kids are just not as messed up as me. They don't need it as much as me, and I consider that a victory. So there's a long answer to that. I hope you just take a little step, Lily. Just one little step. And I don't know where you live and how locked down you are right now, but just next time you go buy some food, just make it a point to give a kind word to somebody there, and just let them know they're doing a great job. Just put yourself out there in the giving way, and you'll find that it's an easy way to get some connection with people without putting yourself at risk at all. Everybody's always happy to get a little kind word, and they need it. They need it more than ever right now. Like everybody needs, I just figure 2020, you got to give people about a 40% margin of error. They're not at their best. And sometimes people are just, flipping out, and you just got to go, like bad drivers and stuff, rage driving and stuff. It's just like, they're, everybody's a little flipped out. But those of us who are doing the daily practice right now, we're just going to come sailing out the door as it gets unlocked down, and life is going to open up, and life is going to hit us in the face. We're going to have so many choices. And have you noticed having freedom and choices means you have responsibility. So ask yourself, this is what I've been working on right now. Do I choose dysregulation sometimes so that I don't have to step up and be responsible? And the answer is yes, sometimes. And I'm learning that I can stay out of dysregulation and still say no to things. Lately, I just think everything comes back to boundaries. I do have a choice. I don't have to say yes to things. All right, I'm coming back to questions, and there's a whole bunch. I'm not sure that I'm getting them in order, but I just want to take what I can here. Um, Maria Tori asks, how do I get off the phone with someone in the family who's abusive? I want to hang up on them. Okay, good question. So if people are like deeply abusive and they're calling you the C word or whatever, just hang up. You don't have to do any fancy footwork. But whenever possible, the best thing you can do for your future, because you're going to get dysregulated. And I don't know about you, when I get dysregulated from getting into a screaming match with somebody, I might lose 3 days of being able to work. I'll be really messed up about it. I don't want to lose 3 days. 3 days is, I can make like 2 YouTube videos in 3 days. I don't want to give that away to some yelling match with some jerk. So here's what I do, is you just find you'd be amazed how much you can set a boundary without telling people what your criticism is of them. It's not like, you know what? You're an abusive jerk. You're gaslighting me. You're doing this. You could do that, or you could conserve all your energy and just say, hey, I got another call on the line. I got to go. I'll call you back. Okay. All right. Bye. Or I hear what you're saying. I'll give that some thought. This is one of my favorite lines. Let me think about that. I got to think about that, but I'll get back to you. Okay. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye. And that's all you do. And they don't even know what hit them. And I was saying earlier in this call, if you were here, that my kid's dad and I used to have these terrible screaming matches. And each of us did our own process that ended up allowing us to be friends and having harmony now, but and raising the kids and not putting them through so much drama, less drama, less trauma. But we do pretty well. And so that was my technique with him. And I told him that I did that with him, that I would say I had another call when this happened on the phone. And it's weird. His voice was very neutral. He'd be in the middle of yelling and I'd say, hey, you know what? I want to hear this, but I got a call on the other line. It's from work. I got to go. I'll call you right back. Okay. And he'd say, okay. Then I'd never call him. And then years later, when I said, did you notice I did that? And he was like, no, I never noticed. He never noticed that I didn't call him back. His whatever moment he was in, because he was going through something similar. He had a childhood similar to mine. Getting divorced was also very triggering for him. And, it just, the moment passes. And that's what's true for all of us. The dysregulation can make it seem very real. It's like, you may have heard me talk about urgency. If you're feeling urgency, I have to speak up right now. I have to speak my mind. I have to speak my truth. I would just say, when you're feeling this urgency to speak your truth or to say what you think, it's a double reason to just wait a minute, wait 5 minutes, wait a day. If there's something that needs to be said, you can say it tomorrow. If there's something that needs to be said. And if you can refrain, you can stop from adding to the damage and the chaos and the drama. And it's totally worth it. The abusive people in our lives are probably never going to change. So what difference does it make if they realize, what it is? If they're ever going to realize it, it's probably going to be from something other than us yelling at them. Their defenses go up, and, it doesn't do any good. What matters is protecting yourself, protecting your energy and your focus. This is precious. The ability to focus is precious. And being in recovery from healing, from CPTSD is all about this precious focus and calm inside that we're learning to cultivate and master like Jedi. So we don't mess around. We just don't mess around with drama, people, as little as possible. That said, you'll have a slip. It'll happen again. All right. Miranda asks, do you have a sponsor in a recovery program like Al-Anon or ACA? I am, and I noticed so much overlap and wanted to know. I don't. I went to Al-Anon for many years, and the alcoholic woman who showed me how to do this was in AA, and this is how she does the 12 steps. So just in case any of you are out there, and you have alcoholism or addiction, or you need a 12-step program, what I'm teaching in the daily practice is an adaptation of what this woman showed me of how she was doing the 12 steps. Not everybody in 12-step programs does it this way. You'll recognize inflections and language and certain structures, but doing it daily, writing daily followed by meditation is kind of a different thing, and reading it all the time, not just like one time every 10 years or something, but it's derived from the steps, and it's taken outside the steps and the 12 traditions so that it can be shared with the world in this way. And so a buddy is the non-12-step version of a sponsor. And ideally, right now, the community of people doing this, there's like 17,000 people right now in my free course. And, only a few of them have been doing it more than a year. It's growing. So it's very hard to find somebody who's been doing it for a long time. But it's happening, it's coming. And especially the people who are like in my coaching programs are becoming especially qualified if they choose to hear somebody. So in the membership program, people help each other out. They listen to each other. And when they have questions, they can ask somebody who's more senior in doing it and has more experience in doing it. Also in my course, Healing Childhood PTSD, there's a whole chapter on how to be a buddy, how to read to somebody, what spirit to bring to that reading, and then how to be the person who's hearing it, what spirit to bring to that, what guidelines to follow. And so that's there for people too. So totally helpful to have a sponsor doing that. But right now we don't have that structure just because we are we're a pyramid that's extremely wide at the bottom and small at the top. It's really popular and doing that. Funnily enough, in Al-Anon, it just didn't have a lot of uptake. My observation is that what we're doing here addresses complex PTSD, and the alcoholics I know who do it have a level of joy and energy and freedom that I have not seen in ordinary AA meetings, and I've been to many AA meetings. It's a wonderful way to work AA. So if anybody's an alcoholic out there and you would like me to introduce you to somebody, email me and I will introduce you to an alcoholic who can talk about doing the steps with them in this manner. And it'll be a little different from what I'm saying because it's AA, but that's out there for you. And I would really recommend that, to check it out at least and see if it's for you. In Al-Anon, well, anyway, the alcoholics, I said, I have a theory that you guys who do this daily all have complex PTSD. And everybody I've talked to said, yeah, I think you're right. And for them, they're focusing primarily on the alcoholism itself. And the way that they view alcoholism is informed by Alcoholics Anonymous, that view of alcoholism, and a lot of stuff that's entirely consistent with CPTSD about the overreaction, fear and resentment, all of that. It's very similar. And my CPTSD, that was my first thing I noticed. It's like I act like an alcoholic. I just don't have a drinking problem. And at the time, I almost wished I did, because then at least you know what to do, right? Stop drinking. But stopping drinking made no difference to my CPTSD. I won't say no difference, but it sure didn't fix it. So there's that. Okay. We're getting to the top of the hour. I'm going to hang out for a while here. All right. Jamie Wetmore asks, do you have a video or more words on forgiving ourselves as mothers? Mom guilt is one thing, CPTSD, dysregulation. Oh, that's such a good question. Mom guilt. And a lot of people write to me about that, where they know or suspect that they've hurt their kids. Okay. It's one of my kids leaving the room. Knowing or suspecting that we hurt our kids, and it's even the best parent is going to hurt their kids sometimes, but sometimes through having dramatic relationships or all the fighting or actual abuse, we know we've hurt the kids. And in some cases, adult kids go out of contact with their parents, and it's a terrible, painful thing. And I tend to be a champion of trying to keep ties with family and remember that parents, when the child in a bad dynamic goes no contact, the parent sometimes suffers greatly. So I work with parents and children in that dynamic. But here's all guilt. And I know it's the most painful kind of guilt. And my mom guilt will sometimes just come up like a knife in my heart in the middle of the night. I sit up in bed, I'm like, "Oh, what have I done?" As it comes to me, and it comes back to the daily practice. Guilt is resentment at myself. And this will be yet another way for you to really hear what fear and resentment are. So I'm resentful at myself because I have fear I hurt my kid, and fear when I smacked his hand in the back of the car. That was violence, and fear I taught him violence, and fear when he punched that kid at school. He really learned that from me. All right. That would be what that's how you could write that. That's how you could write that out. And then at the end, and if you've done the daily practice, there's different formats. You can write your own, but there's a basic format. I'm a God person, so I write, I am now ready, and ask that you, God, remove these fears and resentments. I ask only for knowledge of your will and the power to carry it out. In 12-step, people will recognize some language there. It's borrowed from 12 steps. And when I have less fear and resentment about the hurt I've done, I'm in a better position to apologize and to make things different. And I've had the opportunity to do that in the moment with kids, and, what's lovely is my kids learned to do the daily practice as kids, and when they were very young, we let them give dictation, and we write it down for them and then read it out loud to them and go, "There, now God took it, now you can go to sleep. Good night, love. Mwah." And and the beautiful thing about little kids is they just take it on faith, and they're like, "Okay, it's gone." You know? And, little kids' fears tend to be more about, like, I'm scared of danger, I'm scared of monsters, I have fear nobody likes me, and fear I'm stupid. And those are the common fears for a kid. And they're pretty similar for adults. And you just teach them how to keep taking that off. So with the kids, that helped me because then when I was talking about this in a call the other day, I think with some of you, that when my kids were younger and I was single, and I would have these days where I would just completely lose my shit on them about something, being late, getting out the door. And especially my older kid, I tended to target him as like, "You've made us late again." The little one, it's like, "Oh, he's just little, we can't blame him." But really what the problem was I was just kind of disorganized, and I wasn't able to get us out the door. And so a kid not finding his shoes would make us late. And if you really were on top of it, you'd have space for that. But it was just too much for me. I couldn't do it all. And I would end up losing my temper and yelling. And I'd say to my kids, um, I I just yelled at you. I'm really sorry. Sometimes I'd be in tears. I'd be in a combination of frustration, dysregulation, and shame about yelling, losing my temper at them. And I'd say, if I'm ever yelling at you, it's not your fault. I have lost control of my emotions. I'm really sorry. I hope you can forgive me. And then the part that would always make me cry is they would always just instantly go, "Okay, I forgive you." They would just have total faith in the process. And so I got to have that experience of just knowing that what I had done was forgivable if I could honestly own it and see what I had done and explain it. And by the time they were 8 or 9, I could tell them the what I also recognized, which when I was in that frustrated state, I would think it's like, "It's because of the shoes. It's because you darn kids didn't find your shoes." But what it really was I had a lot of fear about what the other moms thought when I showed up at school 10 minutes late and, kind of ragged and my hair all messed up and not really together because I was depressed and dysregulated. I had fear what they thought, and I was ashamed in advance, and then I would just kind of like get all dysregulated and lose it. So I was able to tell the kids, when I'm yelling at you like that, usually what's going on is I have fear, and they know what I have fear means. I have fear like what other people think of me. It's not your fault, and I'm really sorry. I hope you can forgive me. So I was able to do that. Now that's not to say that my doing that didn't hurt them. I'm sure it did. And as they've gotten older, I have long talks with them sometimes and just say, I've thought about it, or this is the kind of thing that I sit up with in the middle of the night. And I realized that with one of my kids, um, I w- I just he was when I was frustrated, he would just get too much of it, and I just like one time I had a big talk and said, I was frustrated all the time and I took it out on you too much. And I'm looking at you right now, the way that you're feeling bad or you're lacking confidence right now. And I feel so bad because I fear that I did it. And I don't want you to lack that confidence. I want you to be confident. You're a great kid. You always were a great kid. And at least I can express that. But now as they grow up, now even I mean, what would you have given for your mom to just say that? "I did this wrong. I'm sorry. I want the best for you." Like, most of us don't ever get that. So at least I can remind myself, it's like, "Okay, I was able to do my best." And I try to be approachable if people in my life, kids or anybody, need to tell me that I did something wrong. It's hard. I don't like being criticized, but I try to be approachable to work that stuff out. But the only way I have clarity about what I did and the courage to face it is by just twice a day getting my fear and resentment about it onto the paper and off and rest my mind in meditation. And then I have more power. It takes power to admit what you did wrong. It takes power to even know what you did wrong. How are you going to know something like that? It's like there's so much, the mind tricks you. It's other people's fault. I wouldn't have had to do this. The stuff I used to want to say to them when I was in that state. This is all your father's fault. He's a jerk. You want to know what he said? So you don't want to do that to the kids. And to a large degree, I think that their dad and I stayed clear of that. But anyway, nobody's perfect, and that's how you do it. That's how you get over the guilt, is you make good on it. And I have a dear friend who does this twice a day, and I think she's on this call, and she has adult kids, and one of them won't talk to her, and she had a hard past, and other kids have totally accepted her and love her and respect her for doing everything she's doing to heal. One of them won't talk to her, and each kid is like in their own process, and we'll see what happens. But what I've noticed is when we've hurt another person, here's what it takes is the wrongdoer must be honest about what it was. Like, if I tell you, "Hey, look, I'm sorry you're so upset." Nobody wants that apology. Don't even start it. Don't even, it's an offensive apology. You might as well say nothing. But to say, "I realize that I hurt you. I lost my temper when I was afraid what other people thought. And if that were done to me, I would probably, like, it would erode my self-esteem. It would give me a lot of self-doubt. And I'm just so sorry that I did that." If you can demonstrate that you get it, you get why they're hurt, then the heart is a lot more likely to fly open in your loved one. The heart opens when they hear that you get it. And you're not just giving them some bullshit, "Sorry you feel that way," or saying, "I'm really sorry I yelled at you, but you have to understand I was under a lot of pressure and blah, 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 and no, 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 money and your dad and blah, 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 and medical problems." Excuses also will just, whoop, heart shuts down. Not excuses, just only your piece of it. Mhm. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, so Harry just fed me one here. What if your mom what was it? Tell me again. What if your mom wants you to forgive them and move on and get over it, but they never acknowledged what they did? Okay, and that's Sita? Hi, Sita. Okay. Um, yeah, well, that's a lot of people's mom, huh? And, I'll tell you, there's a short-term answer and a long-term answer, and I'll tell you the long-term answer. What a Jedi does is you just totally give it to her. You just totally forgive her. She couldn't control it. She was screwed up, and she is too, out of it to see what it is. And, but somewhere in there, there's somebody who does know what she did, but she can't access it or admit it right now. And so, she'll be dead soon, and now's your chance to, just share some love anyway. So there's my Jedi answer. Okay, that's advanced growth. If you're still at the effect of her and you can't really manage that right now, first of all, forgiveness is a gift. This is my view, okay? A lot of people treat forgiveness as a verb, but I think it's something it just sort of like drops into your mind. And it comes when you no longer have fear and resentment. And sometimes it just comes by grace. It just shows up even when you do have fear and resentment, and you just realize, "Oh, geez, I'm just being so hard on somebody," and they can't help it. Um, my own mom never admitted anything, and she wasn't very loving, and she died. And there was never any reconciliation with her. And I just as soon as she was gone, I just realized, like, my whole battle with her was so fruitless. And I was just sorry that while she lived, she had cancer for 2.5 years. I could have just hung out with her. I could have just enjoyed her, and now she's gone and I can never see her again. Now, My mom did not intentionally hurt me like some people's parents, and so I'm not trying to tell you to compare yourself to me or that everybody's the same or do what I did. Some people really do need to just get the hell away, and that's okay. But um, but if you can't forgive someone yet, I would just say try to focus on your own self-regulation. Just see how far you can get with learning to self-regulate and have boundaries. Try to refrain from criticizing other people, even your mom. That criticizing other people just it's a delicious drug, but it's actually something like methamphetamine. It gets you really high for a second, and then it just rots your teeth, you know? And, I've actually never done methamphetamine. I've done a lot of things in the past, but that I never did. But I see people who do it, and I just mean like a fast-acting drug that gives you a fast fix, but it's really just taking you down. And that's what it is, just criticizing other people and finding fault with them. The more you recover, the more you'll realize that everybody's screwed up, not just you, and that there isn't a campaign being waged against you by the world, that it feels like that. And in some families, that is what's going on, where they exclude somebody and treat them badly. That does happen. I'm not denying that it does happen, but by and large, we're projecting that because of how hurt we are. We're projecting that. And so we start to have just more peace with people. We stop expecting that they're ever going to give us anything. Apologies. I'm telling you, I've gotten like 3 meaningful apologies in my entire life. The people who hurt me, almost none of them have apologized. A couple did. Some of you have heard the story. I had a boyfriend much older when I was 19. He tried to get me into drugs and pornography. It soon ended. Somebody I knew got me out of there, and I luckily did not fall to ruin. And, getting me into pornography, I mean, like, acting in pornography, so luckily that never happened. But he tried. He pressured me, and he degraded me and belittled me and talked about me in a terrible way. And I got a card from him about 10 years ago and out of the blue, and it just said, he had tracked me down. So at first I was freaked out. I saw his name and I was like, "Ooh, oh, da, 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 da." And I opened it up and it just said, "I've been praying for you. I became a Buddhist. I've been praying for you for 4 years and just hoping that what would be, that the damage that I did to you would be undone." And here's what happened when I got that card. It was undone. There was a little bit of it, I had really worked it through the daily practice, but when he said that, it really did release me quite a bit. It was very nice to get a proper apology. And that person, who kindly did that later sort of succumbed again to alcoholism and drugs and became pretty unreasonable and contacted me again in a drunken rant once. And, they didn't sustain that beautiful state, but I still got my apology, and, that card had said I saved it somewhere, I should bring it out sometime and read it. It meant a lot to me, but it was creepy too. But it just said something like, "You were a beautiful, innocent young woman, and I'm so sorry that I damaged you, and I hope you entirely heal 100%. I pray for you every day." So that really did help me understand. I was innocent. I didn't really understand what was going on. I sort of did. I sort of didn't. I was vulnerable. I had no money. I had nowhere to live. And I ended up with this guy in my life, and I had CPTSD and had grown up with alcoholics and addicts and had no red flag detector. So anyway, I dodged a bullet. I got out of there. But most of us are never gonna get an apology from the people who hurt us, and you know what? It's not necessary that we have it. It's nice. Sometimes when you get them there, it's weird, but it's nice, it's nice. But we're gonna become what we're doing now. I think people with CPTSD, if we have this daily practice, we are now we are now something like canaries in a coal mine. We are learning how to change our consciousness. We can now be of service to the world in a way that normal people who never had trauma can't be of service because of our understanding of what people go through. The point of all this healing is not just to feel better. First, you must feel better and you have to have ways to re-regulate yourself. But the point of feeling better is for you to become who you were actually meant to be, not just somebody who's constantly thinking about problems of the past, but who's sharing with the world. And the world is suffering. And there comes a time in your healing when you're mostly over your own stuff and you can start to be of service to other people. And it feels good. It feels good to do that. That's what I'm endeavoring to do right now, but not because I make myself do it. I just can't help it. It's like I got better, you guys. I just want to like get on YouTube and tell you there's a way. There's a way to feel better. And you have a purpose here. So that's what we're doing. Okay. What's the question? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Nat friend says national drama is overwhelming. It's I think anybody who's paying attention is feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. And the reality is that throughout history, humans will erupt into this same pattern of turning against each other on a mass scale. And it's always wrong. It's always wrong to turn against each other. And it always leads to disaster and death. And so, speaking of canaries in a coal mine, now that you have the tools to get free of your fear and resentment, you must prioritize this fear and resentment at your fellows, at your brothers and sisters with a different opinion, or a different idea about what has to go forward. And even if they've been jerks or, broken things or screamed things or called you things, it's terrible. And you've maybe seen some of my videos about this, that it's a lot like growing up in a violent family. It's very triggering for a lot of us, but we must prioritize being able to cope with the triggers and not have to withdraw from life and live in our, well, it's funny how right now we have to like go back in our little caves while this is going on. It's a funny combination, but here we are. You're on Zoom with me. You're connecting with the world. You're doing it now. And we have to show up with fairness and love. And one thing you can do, and I don't make videos about this, but I'm going to tell you now, when you're on social media and people start bashing this person or this leader or that policy, do not participate. Don't ever say a bad thing about a person unless is it true? First of all, everything you heard is probably not true anymore. We are having our chains yanked, you guys, by people who are capitalizing on our anger. If you get people all worked up about things, you can have power over them. Now, there are things to be angry. There's much to do. There's suffering to be addressed, but we're not going to, you'll notice that the more we go into division and hatred against each other, the less is getting done. The more people are hungry, the more people are killing themselves. It doesn't work to turn against each other. There is something that helps to solve these problems, and it's got a very simple name, and it's love. And you're going to have to choose now if you're going to be an agent of love or not. Are you going to go into this dissension and hate against each other, or are you going to work in the service of love? And every single one of us who decides to work in the service of love. So the members have this Facebook group, right? And I was just in a discussion with a beloved member in the past couple days who had posted something about how they had been hurt by people in a particular religion, and just sort of said, how the people in that religion are this way. Or somebody else said that, and somebody else had responded to it. And it was one of the people who responded who I discussed this with. And I really belabored the point, and I said, in this group, we have all kinds of people from all faiths and no faith, from all ethnicities, races, sexual orientations, political stripes. And this is one place where you actually get to love and be together with all of us. And we get to be together, and it's a microcosm of what we all crave. We crave to have like a community that loves us and accepts us as we are. And so it's okay to have something that you're into. And so we were talking about that. We were talking about this person's particular spirituality. And they were saying, can I mention it? And I'm like, totally, you can mention it. You can invite other people to have a discussion with you about it. But what we don't do is just say, how everybody who's in that other group, they're all just a bunch of they just they're all just narcissists, or they're all abusers, or they're all pedophiles, or they're all terrorists, or they're all it's like all the stereotypes of all the religions and political stripes and sexual orientations. Everybody's got a nasty stereotype, and it's all bullshit. Everybody is a beautiful human being finding their way towards truth. And everyone needs a place to be themselves and discover it for themselves with love and acceptance and encouragement. If you want to help somebody, encourage them. Encouragement, and not criticism, encouragement. And when you keep finding yourself with a belief that like everybody from this country is just, I don't know, greedy or lazy or or a thief, catch yourself. If you're anytime you're thinking categorically about a class of people in that way, there is no class of person, and in fact, there is no individual who deserves your wrath like that. You don't get to judge like that if you're going to be a Jedi. You don't, it's always going to be more complicated than that. And the more you wake up, the more you're going to see that everybody, every person, every man, woman, and everything in between, no exceptions, is entirely lovable and meant to be here and working it out to the best of their ability. So then people go, what about Hitler? I'm like, yeah, Hitler had a really long way to go. And we needed boundaries on him, like making sure he couldn't do that anymore. And we had to go fight a war to do that, right? So we can have boundaries against people who are destructive, but most of the people who are getting judged publicly right now are not doing that. They're not hurting people like that. They're just being themselves. They're just being themselves. So there's my plea to you to grow in love and see what you can do to reduce your criticism and judgment of other people. Try to give them encouragement. Try to help out where it's needed. The two places where you can really help people out is help people who are suffering and help yourself to stop being so full of fear and resentment. And that would probably much consume your whole life. And if you do those two things, you're going to make the biggest difference in a world that's got some serious crises going on right now, is to be clear of that and not participating in it. It's so frustrating, isn't it? Yeah, it's a hard time. Okay, so any questions that I should really get to here, Harry? I'm going to give it another 10 minutes, 9 minutes. There's so many good ones. We're going to have to do this again. I know. I know it. Okay, Brooke. Is God necessary for this process? Yeah. No, I've all right, let me just sort of come back from the big speech I made. I was not a God person when I learned this and it worked. Then I became a God person because it worked so much. I just couldn't even believe the miracle that I had transformed so much. So you get to have your own process and you get to begin where you are and see what you find out. Just see what you find out. And whatever is true is actually true for everybody. I dispute the idea that my truth, your truth. There's truth, and then there's all of us mere mortals, trying to feel our way in the dark to find out what's true. So that's one reason why I am so embracing of people where they are with all of that stuff, as long as they're not just trying to damn other people. And so, no, it's not necessary, but what is helpful, I think, especially if you're doing the daily practice. So I teach this in a way that is strictly secular. I do this like extreme versions, one that's totally God, prayer, and one that's like, if all you have is your higher self, you can have your higher self release your fears and resentments. All right. And people here can speak up if you've had success with that. I'm just going to say objectively, watching hundreds of people up close do this and watching myself do it. Well, I'll tell you me, I don't have a higher self. I'm just me. I don't have an inner child. I don't have an inner critic. I just, that's not how I see things. I know what those things mean. I know what those refer to, but it's helped me to just say, I have fear and resentment, and I get it on paper. It's also really helped me to come to believe that there is something bigger than me. I learned that in 12-step, and the woman who showed me how to do this back on that night when I thought I was going to kill myself the next day, she said, do you believe in God? And I was like, no. And she said, do you believe in something? And I had some, I was like, oh, well, I think there's something out there, but it doesn't know who I am or care about me. I think that's a common form of agnosticism. And she said, well, just pretend that something out there really does care about you and wants you to be in your best possible form and wants your pain removed so that you can be okay. And I was like, okay, I was willing to sort of just pretend. And honestly, that idea it was in there already. It was somewhere in there, but I just I had been through so much. It just seemed like I was foolish to ever think that, I had resentment. I had resentment at whatever that is. And she called it the good thing. She said, when you're really like sad and you're crying and you think you're going to die and you can't sleep and you don't know how you're going to get through the night. And then sleep comes and you sleep and you wake up and you're kind of, you're a little better in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. I've had that happen. She goes, well, let's call that the good thing. All right. The good thing, capital G. And she said, so just ask the good thing to come and take your fear and resentment from you. And so I'm often having this conversation with people in the crappy childhood fairy community of like, do you have a good do you know the good thing? Do you know that good thing? Is there some experience in your memory where you were comforted and you were brought back to a better state than you had been when you were completely distressed? And I think most of us know that feeling. It's like, all right, just call that the good thing and ask it to come help you. Ask it to take the fear and resentment. It's my observation that people who ask for it to be removed seem to do better faster than people who try to release it. Releasing it is automatically, try, it's like trying to use a person with CPTSD to treat a person with CPTSD. And there's just some magic that happens when you just sort of go, I don't know, I can't really do this. I've done everything I can think to do and I'm smart. I've gone to all these therapists. I've read books. I've just done my best and I'm just getting worse. I just don't know what to do. Maybe the good thing will come help me. And so when I've had the good thing experience, that's where I get both the grass. You've heard me talk about grass that's been trampled, but if you just like stop walking on it and give it some water and sunshine, it'll sort of grow up and it'll grow up in the shape of grass. And so you will grow up in the shape of men and women and become just come back into your right form and be who you really are. And of course, we're humans, so we're much more complex and wonderful than grass and have so many colors that come out of us and states and contributions and loving kindness and so many good things happen. And it's all laying there in potential, just like some grass that's got roots under the soil, but on top is just, broken and brown and hasn't had water or sun in a long time, or has been I always say under a black tarp. Have you ever seen grass that's it's like yellow and it's grown very long and trying to find its way towards some sunshine. I was like, I identify with that grass. And that good thing comes, and the good thing also, sometimes I've had dreams about it. I used to dream about it before I ever had healing. I would have a recurring dream about this warm water, and the warm water would just first I would be like, I can't get in the water. I've got shoes on. I can't. My suitcase. I got my car. I've got to go somewhere. And I would just be like, oh, but this is just so nice. And I just get in the water, and this very gentle current would just kind of like carry things, and I'd be like, oh, I don't have to do any of that. Oh, that's so nice. And that's how I experience God. That's how I experience God. And so just call that the good thing. And, I think you probably have the same experience somewhere in your history, and reach for it, ask for it to help you. And if what I'm saying is just like, you're like, no, 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 it's not that, then just translate it into what it means to you. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be like me. My experience is my experience, and yours is going to be yours, and just as important. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, we just have a couple minutes, and I wish there were microphones and I could let everybody say hello. This has been incredible. Let's do this again. I'll publish a schedule. Um, Next week at this time, it's going to be Paul Brown, my meditation teacher, is going to talk about Vedic meditation. It's a super simple form of meditation. If you, some people who are in a very traditional form of faith, this might not be your exact form, but you might be interested in hearing it anyway. You can adapt what you're hearing to your faith. It's descended from Hinduism. I don't practice Hinduism, but the form of meditation is so simple. It just, it enabled me to meditate regularly. And so that's going to be cool. And then I'll be on YouTube twice a week now, usually Tuesday with a big 10-minute or more video about, principles. And then on Fridays with something, either a live stream or an interview or something. I'm figuring it out. It's just going so well. I'm just full of ideas. I can barely keep up with it, but I love you guys. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, and thank you for all the incredible comments you share, and for your support, and for helping each other. And And I just glanced at a comment. Can you communicate by Zoom or Skype? Yes, you can. Go to my website, crappychildhoodfairy.com. Sign up for the daily practice. We have Zoom calls every 2 weeks, and everybody gets together and does this. You can become a member. It's $400 US, 400 US dollars. You get access to all my courses, and you get also this group coaching in the weeks between the daily practice calls. Those are very powerful, and they're two-way conversations. And you can sign up for individual coaching on my website. You can also sign up for the upcoming 8-week coaching intensive that will open up again in January. And if because that's not open yet, if you want to be on the wait list for that, shoot me an email, and you'll get information as soon as it comes out and get first dibs on it. So that's coming up. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I would just sit around and hang out with everybody forever, and now it's just like this is taken off so much. I have to find ways to structure it and reach as many people as possible. So I love this live stream. I've just totally loved this process. To tell you the truth, I was so nervous this morning. I just thought this wouldn't go well. I didn't think anybody would show up, and you've made it a joy. So thank you. And I will see you on Tuesday with another video. All right, bye.